We're going to swap a 4l80e transmission into my 2003 half-ton Chevy Suburban. All right, so here's our 4l80e, and I will cover the things you'll need to do this swap. I'm not going to cover every little detail of doing it. I figure the transmission removal and installation, well, that's just kind of tedious work that I'm not going to cover here. If you're doing this, chances are you may have already pulled a transmission before, but I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of that. We're going to cover the differences and things you need to do to swap it. Now I will do another video, a shorter one, covering just the parts. So if you don't care about the details of that, you can check out the other video that just lays out the parts you need, or the parts I needed. I'll clarify that. So this is gonna be the things I had to do and the parts I needed to do this swap. So, like I said, first thing you need is a transmission. So this is a 4l80e out of a 2001 Chevy Silverado 2500, and I found this on Marketplace. In my area, used transmissions seem to be about in the $900 range, and that's what I paid for this one. It may be cheaper around where you are, but that's about the running price on ones from Marketplace. Junkyards, when I looked up, they were, $1,400, and with 90-day warranties or whatever. Now I did buy this one from a shop. It was like a swap shop is what they call themselves. They had square bodies in the parking lot. They had old cars. They looks like they were doing LS swaps and stuff like that. And I think they probably, my assumption is they bought a truck and pulled the 6.0 and 4l80e out and kept the 6.0. He said it was a working transmission, and he gave me a 30-day warranty in writing on a receipt from their shop. So that's why I went that way. There was another reason I picked this transmission. Most of the ones I had seen, looked clean, but you could tell they had been cleaned. This one was as dirty as it came out of the truck, and most of it looks like engine oil from probably a rear main seal and valve covers leaking. I think this thing has not been rebuilt. He said it had 140,000 miles on it. I have no way to verify that. It may have 140, it may have 240. We have no idea, but it is supposedly a working transmission. He told me I could pull the pan on it, so we'll do that and make sure that it's not full of metal. If it's full of metal, we're not going to bother with even trying to put it in. So that was kind of a plus. A lot of these places, junkyards and stuff, they'll mark everything up where, with their little paint pens, and if you break that seal somewhere, like the pan, they won't warranty it. So you just kind of have to put it in there and hope it works. So we'll take a look at this one, but first thing we got to do is clean it up. But you can definitely tell the rear main seal is leaking. It's got oil on the inside of the bell housing. So, like I said, this came out of a 2001. Now, there are some differences through the years on the 4l80Es. I'm not going to get into all that. I will tell you why I chose this one and how I picked it. So, I think there's some differences in the neutral safety switch. My understanding is this is the same one that's on my 4l60e, at least the same plugs. I think the switch itself is the same as well. I think there's also some differences in the shifter bracket. This shifter bracket should work with my shift cable and everything. I did order one just in case, but it's not in yet, but I think this shifter bracket will work. There's some difference in the cooler lines on the different years, and some internal differences. I'm trying to think what else. But I wanted the latest I could get, and the way I kind of determined that is the ones that were behind an LS. So you could say, maybe 99 or 2000 up to whatever. They have this center bolt hole. The older ones that were behind a 350 or whatever, 454, are not going to have that center bolt hole. So that's what I looked for when I was looking on Marketplace. I looked for one with that bolt hole. I knew that was behind an LS and could potentially make my swap easier just because of things like the neutral safety switch. Like I said, it may be the same. I was reading conflicting information on it. This seemed like the better route to go because it's the same chassis era as my Suburban. So, all that to say, let's get this thing cleaned up, and I'm not going to go over the parts until we get our old transmission out and we can start comparing some things, and I'll show you some differences in the parts. But let's get this one cleaned up first. We're going to spray it down with some super clean, let it sit for a little bit, and then spray it off. I'm not going to go crazy cleaning this thing. We just want it to be a little cleaner than it is. Then once we get it cleaned up, we'll pull the pan, make sure everything looks good on it, and put a new filter in it, new pan gasket, put it back together. And I also got a torque converter seal. We'll throw that in it. That's just, why not while you're here? It probably was not leaking. I don't see transmission fluid. Typically, we would, if it was transmission fluid, we would have kind of cleaned up the bell housing area. And this is grimy with motor oil. So I don't think it was leaking, but we're here, we might as well replace it. All right, we're gonna hit this thing with some super clean. I like this can stuff because it's easy, and the foaming stuff to me seems to work a little better. It really seems to kind of break down that dirt and grime. I need to put something over those two ports before we hose it off. And probably we're going to get in here behind this, and then I'm going to pull this switch off before we hose it off. And I'll probably put a glove over that electrical connection. Okay, let me get something and put over these. Probably just take a glove and tie wrap over that and just shove a glove in that one. And then I'm gonna put a glove over the electrical connector. And then I'm gonna unbolt our neutral safety switch and just take it off. Because I think I'm gonna use the one that, these plugs, and just a little tip here. These plugs are glued in from the factory, and they are extremely difficult to get undone. So I just pulled the switch off my transmission, and that's what we're probably going to do, is just take this one off. We'll put my switch that's still plugged in on this transmission, as long as they're the same. I think they are, but we'll verify. But I'll take this off, and we'll unbolt the switch and take it off. Well, it's been sitting about 15 minutes. I did do a quick little scrub down, and I did go ahead and clean up the Flexplate cover, dust cover, whatever you want to call it. Here's our grimy transmission. So I think we're ready now to hose it off, and then we may spray it again and do a light scrubbing again, depending on what it looks like. And I have not seen the underside of this, so I think to do the pan, this thing is heavy. Typically I'd put this thing up on my workbench and try to do it. I think we're just going to use my engine hoist and just pick it up and work underneath it. I think that's going to be the easiest option. So I'm here by myself, so there's no way I'm lifting this thing. We'll probably hit this again. It's still a little grimy. We can clean the inside of the little bell housing area here a little better when we're going to pull the torque converter and put that seal in it. We'll hit that then. We got our gloves protecting everything. Yeah, we'll definitely hit it again. It's definitely looking better though. That was one of the things, you know, I saw other transmissions that look cleaner. This one obviously had not been cleaned up. The others had. And on this one, it appeared it was all engine oil. I didn't see a bunch of transmission fluid. You know, this looks all engine oil. So I figured this was probably we could see what we're getting. You know, it hadn't been cleaned up. All right, I think that's good. And I'm going to spray it one more time and do a little bit of scrubbing, and then we'll hose it off again. This hose goes crazy when I let go of it. It starts whipping like that. Let's go turn the water off. For the second round, I'm actually going to use the spray. No real reason other than we've already hit it once, and I kind of like that can stuff, so we're going to save the rest of it. We've got less to knock off. I can already see it's taking we're dripping some black water or black cleaner. It's already cutting some of it. Yeah. You can see see how it's cutting that stuff. Yeah, no, I've already been over this. We're just hitting it again. Not gonna hurt, but extra. All right, I think that's got all of that. Let's get in here. Just gonna kind of spray it all up in there because we know it's probably grimy up in there. And let's see if we can get some on the bottom front right there. We know that's probably grimy. Yeah, the pan's looking pretty grimy. Where that oil was leaking down on it. Yeah, we can't really get to that side. Let's get that water off of there. Over. I'm not gonna go super crazy with trying to get this perfect, but we don't have that much oil leaks or anything on ours. We'll see what our transmission looks like when we pull it out, but it's gonna look much cleaner than this. I'd like to have it sort of clean so it doesn't look like my engine's leaking this much. All right, we're gonna let that sit, percolate for a little bit, and then we'll spray it down just like we did the other. Well, it's not perfect, but sometimes you just got to say it's good enough, and that's where we are. It's much better than it was. So I'm going to wheel this thing back into the shop, figure out some way to lift it up, and then we'll do a fluid and filter change on it. Well, don't judge too much. We got our engine leveler on here to, well, it's kind of level. It seemed like the easiest way to hook it up. Just some bolts in the bell housing. And we just went to the yoke here. I'm not using this yoke, so, you know, I don't think it would hurt it anyway, but we're not using that one. We can't use that one. So here's our transmission. We're gonna have to kind of get not really under it, but kind of, to undo the pan bolts. So I just threw that 4x4 in there just to be safe. And that way if we blow a seal or something, you know, it's got something holding it up. I don't think we'll have a problem, and we're for sure not breaking this chain. So I think it's safe enough. We won't be directly under it, just kind of to the side of it, but I just wanted something just to be safe. All right, so I don't know. Let's look and see if this one has a drain plug. It does. So we're gonna get a pan and pull the drain plug off. I want to kind of look, well, yeah. Let's do that first, and we'll see what the fluid looks like. My drain pan's kind of nasty, so we're not really gonna be able to see what it looks like once it's in the pan, but we can watch it as it's coming out and see what it looks like. Looks like we got a few little dents on the pan too from this thing being probably scooted around on a shop floor, not by me, but it was sitting on the floor. Well, it was sitting on a piece of cardboard when I went and picked it up. So we're gonna have to clean this pan up. It's pretty grimy underneath. You know, we really didn't get to that point of being able to clean underneath. So, and then we'll also kind of take a block of wood and hammer on a block of wood and kind of get the pan back into shape. So let's it's red. It's a little dark, but not bad. And from what I can see as it's coming out, I don't see glitter or anything. It's about what I would expect. It's pretty red though, you know? I mean, it's not fresh, but it definitely does not look burnt. Smell it. It smells like transmission fluid. It doesn't smell burnt. So I'm gonna let this drain, and then I'm gonna pull the pan off. No need to really hang on for that. I'll just take these perimeter bolts off. We'll pull it out and take a look at it. All right, so looks like we've got a factory style pan gasket, and I think it has been out before. Evidently at some point it got pushed in. It looks like somebody's hammered from this side, but I mean the fluid's a little dark, but if you look, there's not much clutch material or anything in it. I don't see any metal, nothing shiny. So I think what we're gonna do, can't really do much about this. Wish the pan was a little better, but I'm not putting another pan on it. We're gonna run this one. But I am gonna take a wood block and kind of beat out this area just a little bit, because it is a little caved in. We're not going to worry about any of that. You know, somebody's already, I think that's hammer marks where they beat on it. So, you know, I don't know what happened in its life that they did that, but I guess maybe they ran over something and it caved it in, so they just pulled the pan and beat that out and put it back. But yeah, unless somebody put a factory style pan gasket back on it, this is a factory style. It's got the little crush washers, or non-crush washers, I guess. Keep it from compressing too much. It's a good style gasket. We're gonna put a new one in it. Not a factory style, just the one that came with our kit. These are definitely the better gaskets, but I've had good luck with the others as well. So I'm gonna beat this back into shape, and we'll clean the pan, or I'll clean the pan up. I spray it down with some super clean and scrub it just a little bit, the outside, and then we'll clean the inside with some brake cleaner and call it good. All right, it's cleaned up. I gotta dry it, but took a wood block and just kind of beat in this section right in here. It was caved in, and I think we've got it mostly flat. I mean, it is what it is. This pan is really rough. We're gonna run it for now. We can throw some paint on it and make it a little better, but I mean, it is what it is, and we're just gonna, yeah, I don't think we're gonna put any paint on it. We're just gonna slap it back on, and next time I service the transmission, 60,000 miles or so, I'll probably, be on the lookout for a better pan and swap it out at that point. But it'll work for now. It seems flat along the ceiling surfaces, so that's good. But yeah, I took a wood block and kind of beat this out. There was a couple spots, high spots I couldn't get with the wood block. I hit with the hammer. Normally wouldn't do that. I'd keep working on it with a wood block, but this thing has been beaten up so much with the hammer already, I can't tell where I did it and where it was already done. So it is what it is. So we're just gonna run it. I'm gonna take and clean up all these little spots like that, and then it'll be ready to throw back on there. We'll put the new pan gasket on, clean up the seal, clean up this surface on the transmission side, put a pan gasket on it, put a filter in it, and put this pan back on. All right, I've got it back down on the dolly. Need to measure and see. I think I'm gonna have to lift the Suburban up to get this thing under the car. Probably should have lifted on the dolly to transfer it to or left it on that to transfer it over to my transmission jack. But I have a feeling it's not gonna go under the car on the transmission jack. I don't think I can get it high enough. So I'll probably have to wait until I have some help, and we'll have to slide it on some cardboard or something up under the car, and then we're gonna have to pick it up under the car. Maybe even if we have to use some ratchet straps or something to kind of lift it up and get it on the transmission jack. We'll have to do something, because I just don't think I can get it high enough. Really need to get some taller jack stands, or lift would be nice. But pan's back on it, put a new filter in it. The little magnet, I did find it was stuck to the filter. It had some, clutch material on it, but not anything excessive, about what I would expect for something that's maybe had the pan off, but I really just think they took it off to beat it back into shape. It's probably the original filter. It had a GM part number on it. So no idea how many miles are on it, if that 140 is accurate, but we're just going to assume our little transmission cable, shifter cable bracket is a little bent. I did order one because I forgot it had one on it, so I ordered one for it, thinking it did not have one on it. So I can send that one back. We'll just bend this one back as long as it works. I think now I'm gonna go finish removing our 4l80e. I'd like to get them side by side so I could do some measurements and stuff. So I think that's our next spot. I've got the bell housing just finished, bell housing cover. in the ultrasonic cleaner, just trying to get it a little bit cleaner. So yeah, let me go get busy and get the other transmission out. It's almost ready to come out. Well, I got a mess of tools and parts here, but got our transmission out, and this is how I had to get it out. I've got my jack stands as high as I can put them, and I was able to get it out the front on here. I think when I did it before, put it on some cardboard, but I think I may have also put the bell housing when I went back together with it. I think I left the torque converter off, and I actually put the bell housing on under the car to make it easier, and then put the torque converter on. I think that's how I did that. But I know pulling it out, I just set it on some cardboard and slid it out. I got it up a little bit higher this time, so I was able to sneak it out with I just slid the front of it off onto this creeper and left the rear of it just on the transmission jack. So, worked out. Yeah, and then I put a piece of wire right there to keep the torque converter from sliding off. So, not too bad. So now we're at the point where we can start checking differences. I need to measure length. We need to try to figure out what we're doing for drive shaft. I've got a yoke. I did a measurement of the drive shaft. I put it purposely, when I jacked it up, I put the stands under the rear axle to keep the rear axle at ride height. And then I was able to took a measurement on the yoke. So we can keep wanting to step in front of there, but I know that fan is gonna make a lot of wind noise. And my voice is shot and got a cold. We're gonna slip the yoke back in this transmission. We're gonna get a length measurement from where it bolts to the bell housing to where the yoke is. I'm gonna position it at ride height, because I measured basically from the seal across the yoke to get a measurement there. I took a picture of it so I can recreate that out here and measure because our point that will not change, this is longer, but our point that will not change is our axle. So from our drive shaft forward, drive shaft bolted to the axle forward, and then from our engine, so the engine and rear axle have not moved. I'm hoping this makes sense. So what I need to do is measure here. We're going to recreate, I've got another slip yoke. We're going to recreate that measurement from basically the center of the U-joint on the yoke to the bell housing. And we're going to do that measurement here. And then we're going to see how much we can go in on this one at that measurement. It may even be longer than that. We may not even get it to that measurement. It may stick out more than that measurement. But if we do, we want to see how much we can go in. So how much it goes in for suspension compression. The drive shaft's going to go in, or the yoke is going to go into the transmission. We'll do the same thing over here. We'll measure how much it can go in before it bottoms out. And we want to try to get this to about that same measurement. Now, we may have to shorten our drive shaft. I don't know yet. I've seen conflicting information of some people having to get it shortened, some people don't. So we're just gonna have to measure and see. So I think now is about the time I will show y'all parts. We'll kind of walk through that, and then we'll start trying to figure out the yoke and if we think the drive shaft length is going to be okay, or if we're going to have to get it shortened. All right, first thing, you're going to need a cross member. Now, I've seen some people, they take and they cut up the stock cross member and kind of shift it back and re-weld it, or put a little extension on the back of it. Picked this up on Amazon. It was under $60. I feel like that was money well spent to be able to just swap it in and, you know, quick and easy. It seems to be pretty decent quality. The welds are better than I expected. There's a couple of welds that are a little skimpy, but I think it'll be fine. So the next thing, if you do not have a dipstick tube, I have one, but they bent it over, and so I tried to bend it back, but it looks like it's about to crack, so I stopped. So this is a dipstick tube out of like a 2001, you know, Silverado 2500. The dipstick tube on a 4l80e is different. So if you're getting it out of, you know, GMT 800, 3/4 ton, 1 ton, whatever, then, you know, you can probably reuse that dipstick tube. I could have reused mine if they didn't. I think they bend it over to make sure nothing got down in it. I don't know, or they did it trying to pull it. I don't know, but whatever the reason was, it was bent over, and when I straightened it out, it looked like it was going to break. So this was $50 something. So, and I'll put a link in the description to all these parts. If you're buying one out of an express van or something like that, you know, you'll need a dipstick tube. This is the one that should get you what you need. As far as the dipstick, from what I read, the 1/2 ton and 3/4 ton dipsticks are the same. Now, I did get a dipstick with this. I got it, like I said, a bent over dipstick tube, but the dipstick is actually good. Now, what I read said 1/2 ton and 3/4 ton. Dipstick length is the same. Now, my dipstick and the one that came with this transmission are slightly different. The one that came with this transmission is about 1/2 an inch, 3/8 of an inch maybe, shorter. This one's longer, 3/8 of an inch longer. So I don't know. I'm gonna look up the part number on that dipstick and see if maybe somebody at some point put a different dipstick in this. I don't know. As of right now, I'm just gonna leave that dipstick that dipstick with this transmission, but I will verify the part number on it and cross it and see if that is the correct dipstick, or if I should use the one out of my 4l60e. Torque converter bolts. So on a 4l60e, you have 3 torque converter bolts. The 4l80e has 6 torque converter bolts. So you're either going to need to buy 3 bolts, or, you know, buy a set. I just bought a whole set. I think this was $30 or $30 something on Amazon. Now, the wiring. There's a lot of different ways to do this. So the actual connector between the 4l60e and the 4l80e is the same connector, but the pinout is slightly different. So you can repin your connector, but you're also going to need to run a wire for the speed sensor up to the ECM. I opted just to buy this from ICT Billet. It's made in USA. It's a good quality. It's, you know, basically a jumper harness that repins that connector for you, and then it also comes with the speed sensor wire. It's all nice and pretty, you know, so you in wire loom, so you can run that up to your ECM. I did this just because it's good quality. you can, if you don't want to, you can repin it, but you still have to run the speed sensor wire. You can buy these cheaper. This is about $120. You can buy, you know, made in China stuff that, you know, probably 40 bucks, and do that if you want. You can repin it and run your own wire, however you want to do it. But I wanted a good quality harness. I wanted to make this as quick and easy as possible. You know, I'm without my daily driver right now, so I opted to do this. It was the simplest solution. 120 bucks, around 120 bucks, and I'm done. You know, don't have to worry about it, and good quality, so shouldn't have to worry about that later down the road. I bought a new torque converter seal. Not necessary, but probably a good while you're in there. You know, might as well do it. This one didn't appear to be leaking, but yeah, cheap insurance. Here's a dipstick tube. I would probably replace this even if I wasn't replacing the dipstick. Just, you know, it's a common leak spot. Might as well throw a new one in. I think this is actually a GM one, part number right there. Like I said, I'll try to put a link in the description for all of these parts. This is the yoke I chose. Now, it's a long story on this yoke. I'll try to make it quick as possible. My transmission that I bought has a fixed yoke. It bolts onto the end of the transmission. It is not a slip yoke. That will not work on my Suburban because my Suburban has a one-piece drive shaft. If you have a two-piece drive shaft, then your 4L60E may have a fixed yoke as well, or maybe they didn't come with fixed yokes. But anyway, if you have a two-piece drive shaft that has the slip in the drive shaft itself, then you could use a fixed yoke. But you know, if you're doing it on a truck with a two-piece drive shaft, since I needed a yoke, I ordered this one. I did a lot of research on this, and the reason I chose this one is it uses the same U-joints that my drive shaft uses. That keeps me from having to, you know, do a conversion joint. You know, it's different on each end because most 4L80E are going to be different, are going to be a larger U-joint. Most 4L80E or Turbo 400 yokes will have a larger U-joint than what the yoke on your 4L60E has. Now, what this is from a half-ton four-wheel drive, and the spline count on the transfer case on that is the same as the spline count on the output shaft of the 4L80E transmission. So this is actually a half-ton yoke, but it's got the same spline count as the 4L80E. It should, you know, slide right in there, and it allows us to use our same U-joint that, you know, is on our Suburban already. Now, I did buy a new U-joint just to have, so we're going to put a new U-joint in it. I'm going to put this in here real quick. If you do not have this shifter bracket, this is the one I said I ordered, but I don't need. I'm going to send this one back. This is the same shifter bracket that came on my transmission, 2001 Silverado 2500. This is the shifter bracket you need. So I will put a link to this one in the description. This is just an aftermarket one. This is not GM, but it is identical to the GM bracket. And last, you're gonna need a Flexplate. Now, unless you get a custom torque converter that has the 4L60E pattern, I know they do make those, you know, the 3-bolt pattern. But I'm using the stock torque converter, and so you need a Flexplate. And the difference in this, I'll pull my old one. Let me pull my old one real quick, and I'll show you the difference in them. Okay, this is our 4L60E Flexplate, and if you look, see how it's dished? and it only has 3 holes for the torque converter. Here's our 4L80E one. You can see it's not dished, but it's got a spacer on it. And it's got the 6 holes for the torque converter. So this is what you need to be able to bolt up to the torque converter on a 4L80E. This will bolt right up to our 5.3. And since this has a spacer, you do need longer bolts. And this ATP flywheel does come with Flexplate. ATP Flexplate does come with the longer bolts. That's why I chose this one. That way we didn't have to source bolts. If you take a look, the difference in them, our original ones are shorter. And I like that these have a little bigger head too. So let me get y'all the part number on that. And that is a ATP. Again, all this will be in the description. There you go. So that is our parts. I guess I can show y'all the slip yoke. There's not much to see, I guess, really. It's a slip yoke, but there it is. And I'll let y'all know how this one works out as far as drive shaft length. So let me get busy on that.
One other thing to note real quick is your transmission cooler lines are going to be too short. You can either extend your lines, the pressure and the return, both are going to be too short. So you can either extend those, or you can source lines from, you know, a 3/4 ton version of your vehicle. So I extended mine. I'll cover that in a little bit, but I think I am going to circle back at some point and replace the lines. I have no idea if the 3/4 ton lines will fit my Suburban, but I am going to try it at some point. But for now, I just extended them. Like I said, I'll cover that in just a little bit.
Well, conflicting internet information bites again. These both measure 31.5 from the bell housing to the seal. I don't know. Maybe what I was reading, somebody had a shorter tail 4L60E or a longer tail 4L80E. I don't know, but I'm getting the same measurement. This is good for us. This is good for our drive shaft length. So I'm gonna unbolt this yoke, fixed yoke, and we'll slide in our slipped yoke that I showed y'all, and we'll see. We're gonna do some measurements and see if we can get by with just putting a new yoke on our drive shaft and leave the drive shaft length the same. Okay, that is slid in all the way. It will not go any further. I just used a wood block and a mallet, rubber mallet, to gently tap it in and make sure it was fully seated. And then our 4L60E is in all the way. Sorry, the wind's probably getting y'all. The fan.
So I'm going to take some time and do some measurements here and try to figure out how much we need to shorten this yoke. It's going to have to be shortened from my quick measurements I did, but I just kind of want to get a precise measurement, make sure we don't cut too much off or not cut enough. And then I'll just use my chop saw and shorten it, and then we'll bevel the end of it.
All right, I went ahead and just cut an inch off. I did some measurements from the center here to here, and just from this yoke and our other yoke into the output shaft to the bell housing on both transmissions, and the transmission dimensions are identical. So this yoke was an inch longer here, and actually the same dimensions here, and I went ahead and just cut an inch off to make it the same, and just beveled right there on my sander. Not perfect, but it's pretty good. And then beveled that with a burr, just a little burr on the air die grinder. And then I took a little file and got between each spline to just make sure there's no little burrs in there. And so I think that's pretty good. We're gonna put this on our drive shaft with the new U-joint, and we should be in good shape.
All right, so I wanted to add this in real quick. I would recommend that you measure the yoke on your transmission at ride height before you pull the transmission. And that way you know how much of the yoke sticks out of the transmission, so you can recreate that and figure out what you need to do on the yoke for your 4L80E. So I put a picture of the measurement I did on my 4L60E before I pulled it. And then I slipped my yoke back into the transmission when it was on the ground and adjusted it to that same measurement, with the same amount of slip yoke sticking out of the transmission. And I measured from the bell housing to the center of the U-joint on the yoke. And then I slipped the yoke into our 4L80E, and I measured from the bell housing and recreated that same distance. I then went back over to my 4L60E and I slipped the yoke into the transmission to see how far it would go, and then measured, and then I went over to my 4L80E and did the same thing, and it bottomed out. So I knew at that point I needed to cut some off the yoke. The yoke was too long. So I then measured the non-spline part of the yoke from where that starts to the center of the U-joint between the two yokes. I got the same measurement, and the only difference in the yokes that I could measure was that the spline portion of my new yoke was 1 inch longer than the old yoke. And so that's why I cut 1 inch off. Now, GM may have used all kinds of different yokes on these. I have no idea. Please do not just blindly cut 1 inch off of your yoke. Measure and make sure you cut the correct length off. You don't want to leave it too long. You don't want to make it too short. You want to end up with a good amount of spline engagement into the transmission, but you don't want it too long that if you hit a big bump, that it's gonna bottom out into the transmission. So you've got a little wiggle room, but you want to get it as close as possible to the correct length. And that's, after lots of measuring, I landed on 1 inch, but it may not be 1 inch for you. So just measure and cut the appropriate amount. Well, this video is getting a little long, so we're gonna go ahead and end it here. In the next part, I'll have the transmission in the Suburban. I'll show you some of the differences there and the things you need to adjust for. We'll cover the wiring and the tuning and wrap up this install. But just too much to get into one video. Didn't want to make a 2-hour video of this. So that's it for this one. If you have any tips or tricks that you've done, I'm done. By the time I'm editing this video, I am done with the swap. So I guess it won't be helpful for me, but for anybody else that's watching this, thinking about doing the swap, leave those comments. I'm sure they'd find it handy. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment down below, hit the like button, and subscribe for more.